Hi, my name is Jason Bunn-Parsons, and I'm once again here with my mentor, Sue Golubach, to talk about analyzing the autism educational system. This is part 4 of the 6-part series, and this is going to be talking about what the end results are, which I believe is important before we actually talk about what the major problems are, which some of them will be brought up in this episode, but before we can understand why this is before we discuss how we'd like to change the system, we need to understand why the system needs to be changed in the first place. That way, people will be more open to these changes and realizing the need for these changes. And so, Sue is going to kick things off with some information that she has compiled.
Okay, thank you, Jason. I'm going to start off with some research that's done by the Organization for Autism Research, a study that they did on social connectedness, social development in autism. What they found are that certain elements that they studied that they found weren't important. For example, the quantity of social interactions between autistics and between non-autistics really doesn't differ. We seek social interactions as much as non-autistics do. Yes, there can be a difference between how autistics interact with non-autistics. It's called the double empathy theory. We can relate better to people who are like us, who understand us. It's the same as cultural differences between two Italians are going to probably have a lot more in common and do more socializing together than someone from Italy and someone from France, because they have different cultural backgrounds. Well, the same thing between autistics and non-autistics. So there are differences in how we socialize, but they found that the quantity of our socializations really are not different. And yet that's one of the things that unfortunately we're teaching. And mostly it is interjecting autistics with non-autistics, thinking we will pick up non-autistic behaviors. And that's how we're going to learn to be more like them. The amount of social knowledge, i.e. awareness of social rules and behaviors that autistic individuals developed, actually they found had little or no relationship to the outcome, i.e. how well they interacted socially. And yet we spend a tremendous amount of time on teaching them through social stories, how they should interact and what they should expect via those interactions, et cetera, et cetera. And yet a lot of the times, what they say in the social story we're supposed to end up feeling, it doesn't work with how it actually works if we try it. So what this study is saying is we're wasting our time on these particular areas of social interaction. They did find there's a lot of variability among autistics themselves, just as there is with other individuals, such as motivation is not varies from individual to individual. And actually, the more motivated the autistic individual is, they discovered the poorer their skills often were, because they're so focused on wanting to be social that perhaps they haven't learned all the basics of what it is they need to be successful at it. And that varies a lot. Social cognition, the ability to read other people's emotional states, understand perspectives, regulate their own behavior, all of that varies from individual to individual among autistics, as it does among general population. That is not a determining factor as far as social interaction success. The speed with which autistic individuals are able to process social information, i.e. sort out what's happening and how to respond, was only a little slower than non-autistics, and I will explain why. In the typical social interaction, first of all, you have to recognize who you're talking to. And then if you want to say something to them, you shift to this area of the brain. But if you want to process what they're saying, you need to shift to this area of the brain. If you want to watch for their nonverbal action, it goes this area of the brain. You can see where I'm going with this. It is a very complex. If you want to recognize an emotion they're expressing and then maybe empathize with it, again, there's two other areas of the brain. And then to make a decision and be alert to potential dangers and what's happening, and then to plan what you're going to do, um, is all this area of the brain. So, as you can see in the typical brain, all of these connections are rapidly moving from place to place to place within the brain. But the autistic brain, research has shown that there's a lot of inconsistency and changing in the way the connections are made within the autistic brain. So it's going to take us a lot longer. It doesn't mean we can't. It's just it's going to take us a little bit longer. What they did find that's important and what we need to be focusing on is what we're not teaching. For example, insight and self-awareness is key. If I don't understand who I am, how can I be a partner in a relationship? I'm going to be either focused on you, or I'm going to be so focused on myself that I'm not paying attention to you. So insight and self-awareness, especially perceiving that I do have social strengths as well as limitations, which everyone does. It's all a matter of perspective. But because we, in teaching us, you're focusing on our limitations so much, we don't develop. You're not helping us develop this insight and self-awareness to that we have a strength side to us as well. Social creativity is important that they found, i.e., to be able to socially problem solve when situations occur. They found that autistics highly creative in coming up with solutions to social problems. They're just not always that realistic, which means we need to be able to see other people's perspective in order to come up with perhaps more realistic solutions to problems. So we've got to strengthen that area. But that's what you need to be teaching us, is the other people's perspective, so that we can take that into account when we are problem solving. And then the last thing they said is so important is contextual variability, the ability to adjust our behavior in different social contexts. I.e., you can teach us, okay, when you greet someone, you extend your hand and then you grip it for only 3 seconds. You don't want to overdo it, underdo it. This is how you teach us to do things rotely. And yet, if I offer my hand for a handshake to a peer, they're going to look at me like I'm weird. I mean, they want to do a high five, but they don't do a handshake. And yet you're not teaching us variability, as far as in different situations, you use different behaviors, and why. That's not teaching us what we need, which is called flexible teaching. So Jason, take over from here.
Unmute myself. Okay. And so, yes, this is a great starting point for me, because, when you're talking about, what you're just talking about, I refer to as robot mode, okay, is where I get so focused on implementing the protocol that I'm not even focused on the other person. And one of the times I really noticed this was back when I was a volunteer English teacher. And so, that there was this curriculum that would be used to, and I'd be so into the book that I wasn't even paying attention to my students. And particularly when you're talking about that type of class, each student is at their own developmental level in terms of where they are in English. And yeah, and that's the problem, is that robot mode actually hinders my social skills. Okay, my ability to interact, socially, because I'm focused on the protocol rather than on actually, interacting with that individual. And then what happens when, okay, yeah, you teach them, okay, you say A, they respond with B, and the result is C. Okay, so you say A, they tell you to go bleep yourself. Then what do? Not everybody follows those protocols. Some people have attitudes, and so that's the whole thing, is this idea that that there's this formula to use when socializing with people. The formula doesn't always work, and so advance it back to, go back to the previous slide, with the brain there, please. Thank you. Okay, and so one of my other mentors, Dr. Brian Woodruff, is a neurologist who works with geriatric conditions. He joined our group years back in order to, for personal reasons. But anyway, it's so one of the things that he helped me do is develop a simple explanation of autism from a neurological standpoint. Well, fairly simple, because there are some big words in here. Autism is atypical neurological connectivity paradox. The results in increased neurological activity in certain parts of the brain and diminished activity in other parts compared to other autistics. And so just focus on, okay, the fact that our neural connectivity is different. We may have more connectivity going to one part of the brain than to other parts. So when we're needing to bounce around our brain to hit this part and this part and this part, our traffic doesn't flow as smoothly. It's like that them being too late in building the freeway system up, and all of a sudden we have this traffic jam, because too many cars and not enough freeway. And so that is what a lot of what autism is too much information, not enough neural connectivity in order to move all that information, bounce it around to all the parts of the brain that need to be engaged in it, in the 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 response or whatever. So anyway, it's so I'll go ahead and remove this now. And so as far as the types of groups that Sue and I run are different. She runs a general purpose support group, which a lot of socialization, where her and her co-organizer Tara are there, to provide knowledge, to people. Where my group is a support group for those people who are struggling and who've decided that they want to improve in certain areas of their life. And so as far as the success stories, tend to not stick around my group very long, because my group doesn't actually offer them what they're looking for. I remember a few years, this one young lady, came. She just completed high school. She had her college all planned out, her life all planned out, and her mom was sitting next to her, all proud of her and ready to have her support. I wish every single autistic student that came out of high school was like this young lady. This young lady, I know there's a very high reason to believe that she's going to succeed. Um, you know, uh, there's another young lady that's joined our group who was a late diagnosis. We got her self-confidence, self-esteem built up, and she's then enrolled in school, and she's now working on her master's degree in entrepreneurship. And so, yeah, she hasn't been around a lot either. Um, Several years ago, when pre-COVID, I was doing a topical discussion on third Saturdays. I was presenting uh, on on um, on occupational issues, and so this one guy, who had showed up that one time, after I got done, I asked him, "So, got any questions or comments?" And he's like, "Where are the girls at?" Because yeah, he was already well set in his vocational field. He just wanted a girlfriend. Okay, and so it's like, okay, he never came back, and so when we're talking about the people that tend to show up at my group. Okay, my group is catered for those which the system did not work for them, whether because they got their diagnoses after high school, and therefore they obviously couldn't get the support that they needed, or that they went to got an early diagnoses, and yet that they didn't have the success, and a lot of it once again, is like Sue was talking about, when you spend so much time talking about what's wrong with us, what basis do you have for self-confidence or self-esteem? Okay. And no, and so I actually believe that's um that I actually have an advantage over a lot of these individuals that had those kind of experiences, because I didn't get diagnosed till I was 40. So I went to a general purpose 12-step program, a Christ-centered 12-step program, in which I worked on codependency. And one of the things that they did was they worked on building up my self-confidence, self-esteem. They got me to stop obsessing over all my failures. Like, look, you did good here, you did good here, and got me into that mindset of not just obsessing over all these past mistakes, all these failures. It's like, wait a minute, I was doing good. I was involved in our church's children's program and all these good things, and that matters too. And so that's one of the big things when I look at at what's at what the results are, and and it's so what happens is, okay, they're now out in the real world. Okay, they get into the adult world, and first of all, they never want to disclose that their autism, because of the fact that it is a bad thing to them. It's an emotional beatdown. And my pre-diagnoses, I didn't want to talk about my work history, because my work history was such a disaster. It was almost nothing but failure. And so I'm going out, I'm trying to apply for new jobs, and they're looking at, wait a minute, you had 6 jobs in 1 year? And and obviously I get defensive, and and so that's the thing, is that that you need that they need to be able to disclose when it's necessary, because sometimes we do need accommodations. Okay. My my reading and writing was tested. Well, I had a full assessment done of me with at Voc Rehab, and my reading and writing came out at a 6th grade level. Okay. And so so if I'm going to go I'm applying for a new job, and that they're wanting to teach me their way of doing things, they give me a manual this thick, like, okay, that's not going to work for me. you know I need accommodations. Okay. And so yeah, in those situations where you need accommodations, you need to be able to explain yourself in a way that's that is going to garner the respect of that person. The problem is that that the way that so many autistics explain themselves, who they are, what the other person is hearing is that I'm a hapless, helpless neurological defect that you need to feel sorry for. Okay. And and that's not going to get good results, and that's also going to cause autistics to not to self-disclose, because they don't want to talk about themselves like that, but that's what they feel about themselves, because nobody has given them a basis to feel otherwise. Okay. And some of these kids, that they start, becoming, internet involved, say around 4th or 5th grade. So they're Googling what is autism, and they're going to these pages, of these autism organizations, and they're seeing these descriptions, which that there is nothing but negativity. That then you go to one of these that what one of these um speaking things that these organizations put on. Oh, we deal with autism from a positive point of view. Really, why isn't any of that positivity in your description of autism? Okay. And then once we get the programs, get started in the program, that's like, okay, what are you going to be, how are you going to be helping us do? Okay, we're going to fix this problem, we're going to fix this problem, we're going to be fixing this problem. That's not positivity. That is not looking at autism from a positive point of view. Okay. That's the thing, is that just when we're talking about focusing on strengths. A great example of this was the last week of school, this past school year, I actually was filling in with another class. And I went into they were in the art room when I joined them, and I saw this boy cutting out this little picture he drawn. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then he explained to me that he had drawn a diagram of. By the way, this is a third grader of the Earth's magnetic field. Okay, and I looked. I was like, that's exactly how it's drawn up in the textbooks. And then yeah, he explains to me that the magnetic field is to block out the solar radiation, for from the sun. And so it's like, yeah, that's what I expect from my fellow autistics, is to just blow the minds of everybody. And so here's the thing is, okay, so he definitely has this gift. And so Miss Newbell, the art teacher, what she does is she does a quickie program arts project to start off with, but it leaves enough time for freelance artwork. Okay, which is what this boy did. And so he took that opportunity to um what's the word that I'm looking for, to add on, to build on, to develop his interests, and so that is positivity, you know and so that is one of the things that's that that when we're talking about that the end results, of these kids, not having the self-confidence, self-esteem, is because they're not being told why they should believe in themselves. Okay. All that we're doing is we're spending so much time, talking, about what's wrong with them, and how are we going to fix them, and not genuinely, trying to find, you know, focus on, what is the strengths and how to develop. And sometimes it's a bit challenging. If they have high aptitude in computers, it's a lot easier to develop than for somebody like me, which my strengths weren't really my that they have a vocational relevance, weren't really, that obvious going through school. But that's the thing is, we need to give the kids a basis to not hate themselves, because if they come out of their hating themselves, when they go to advocate for themselves, and to explain who they are to a boss, they're going to come, they're going to explain themselves in a very negative way, because that's what they feel about themselves. And so they're not going to have a positive vocational experience if no no so anyways, um so I think that's pretty much wraps up what I'm wanting to say. Sue, do you have anything you'd like to comment as far as what I just said?
I totally agree. I mean, I get for 50 years, I didn't even discover autism until I was 50. And growing up, initially, I liked myself. I just wanted people to leave me alone so I could be the person that I enjoyed being as a
Mhm.
child until I started school. Then all of a sudden, I became aware that I was different. And just the fact that even though my parents say, well, we just accepted that's who you are, but I noticed that the only time they gave me praise was when I did things the way they liked me to be. And and it was like my peers, when I did those things, I would get praise. But I never got praise for the person I knew I was. And they never talked about my being different and that it was okay to be different and to encourage me to do those things. They the all the encouragement was I was supposed to learn to be like everyone else. And so, yes, I did change from really liking myself to not liking myself at all, especially when I was in the presence of other people. So, yeah, I experienced exactly what Jason's talking about
Okay, so
um, in my life.
okay, so okay, so yeah, I think that we're pretty much made all of our points, and I'm starting to definitely get a little redundant, making the same point over and over again. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close this off, and so then tomorrow, no, we're going to be talking about some of these systemic issues that I see in the yeah in the educational system. And quite frankly, um the problems start above Principal Lodato's pay grade. Okay. The problem, because like I said, Emerson is absolutely wonderful. One of the two best jobs I ever had, this and United Cerebral Palsy. But the problems that the systemic problems come, with you know, starting with the United States Congress and the President of the United States, going all the way down, state legislature and governor to the to the governing boards and all that. That's where the problems are. The attitude that's that they have towards um towards menial labor employees like IAs, and and ultimately that's where the problem starts, is their attitude towards education, and specifically entry level employees that have little to no education, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on, um predominantly, um, predominantly tomorrow. So anyway, so I will go ahead and end this unless Sue has one last thing she wants to say before I go.
Again, I will be supporting everything that Jason has to say.
Yeah.
And with my 30 plus years of working in the school system as a therapist, I'm going to be bringing in some research to support what he has to say as well.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Until tomorrow, have a nice day.